Hey, how's it going, Captains? Admiral Hattori here, and what I have here today is a bonus video. I purchased this deck of cards from the USS Midway Museum, and right here you can see right away on the back. This is the Duke of York, a King George V class battleship from the Royal Navy. So I'm going to unbox it and we're going to check out what they have to offer for each suit of cards. Right away, we got some really nice clean feel to this deck. It always feels great to unbox something brand new. So I had this for a while and I went to the Midway last summer. Just not really got the chance to actually do a video on this particular deck of cards. And if you guys know any history, especially when it comes to the deck of cards, it seems to me that deck of cards is one of the most common games to play aboard a ship, actually. And in general, in the military branch, a lot of people like to gamble cigarettes during World War II. So let's pop this thing open. How much it cost me to buy this? It cost me $13. So World War II battleships, and right here we got an Iowa class battleship. Maybe I can see the number on it. It looks like 60. So this is the original Iowa. Should be 60. Is it 60? So 60, 61, 62, 63. Or was it 61? I don't recall what number the numbers for the Iowa class started with. All right, 64. So that should be, it has to be start with 61. Look at that, we just answered that question. So I can't really see right now because the font is very small on this cover. But here we go. Let's see if we can peel this off. Come on now. Do I have a tool to peel? My nails are trying to dig into this, but it's not working out. Oh, there we go. Look at that. All right. Get all this plastic out of this deck of cards. That sweet sound of removing something brand new. So, the United States Ace, the Wisconsin. We have the USS Washington, a North Carolina class battleship. Oh yes, the Japanese Yamato with the Haruna, a Kongo class battleship. I know one thing about the British. You know, English is a very funny language. When I read something, I would guess the name would be pronounced intuitively like Barham, but there's a side of me that says that that's not really how you pronounce the ship name. It looks like a battle cruiser to me. I'm not familiar with this. Of course, most of my knowledge is coming from World of Warships because that's the best way to get a first impression of a ship that I've probably never heard of. I got most of my ideas from World of Warships, but eventually I do spread out on the internet looking around for ships that I don't know. Look at that, the USS Nevada. I am from Nevada, and it is so fitting for a person like me from Nevada talking about a deck of cards living in Las Vegas, a city that has plenty of gambling. Here we have is the USS Texas, the oldest battleship that stands to this day in the United States. Now, surprisingly, I am very surprised that I do live in the United States, and if you guys know, of course, the United States, the U.S. citizens love to stress freedom of speech. They did not put the swastika on this deck of cards, which means that, yeah, there are some censorship in this situation. So we got the German battleship Tirpitz, the heaviest of the Bismarck class battleships. I would guess that it was slightly heavier for extra equipment, and it was equipped with torpedoes. And here's the irony. They even Photoshop the swastika out. But if you know the Scharnhorst, or at least even the Admiral, de Grasse Bay, It has a Nazi bird. I don't recall what the bird exactly is. It might be a Valkyrie. It might be. You get the point. It's one of the bigger birds, and they would have the swastika. And I don't know if you guys can see that. There we go. I got the camera to focus, but there's a swastika on the stern of this ship, and yet they center and Photoshop the flag in the photo, the original photo. Yeah. Go ahead and dock a point on this particular deck of card. It went from 5 out of 5 to 4 out of 5. Here's the North Carolina. Look at that. It has the black bloomers and the white one. So I'm guessing that they are going to, I guess, replace it. Here we go. We got the beautiful USS Arizona, the ship that is the most famous out of World War II in terms of the attack on Pearl Harbor, because her second turret, if I recall correctly, detonated, which caused the bow of the ship to blow off completely. The Arkansas, or some of you guys out there who are outside the US might call it Arkansas. It's really Arkansas. Oh, here we go. The USS Tennessee. This is a New Mexico class battleship, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong, but it looks like a New Mexico to me. And we have the mighty Bismarck. Probably out of all these battleships so far, the Bismarck received the most recognition because she was the one that really demonstrated the last major battle for a battleship. If you haven't read about or watched anything about the Battle of the Denmark Strait, you should take the opportunity to go on YouTube and watch videos about the Bismarck. The Duke of York. Indiana. This is, oh my gosh, this is a South Dakota class battleship. A treaty ship. Beautiful. HMS Repulse. I recognize this ship because this is a battle cruiser. I played Steel Ocean some time ago, and I got this ship for free. Oh yes, HMS Rodney, a Nelson class battleship. One of my most favorite ships in general. A lot of people like to say that she's ugly, but ugly is sometimes beauty. Here is the Littoria ship. This is the Italians' largest class of battleship. Of course, in World of Warships, you have the Roma. And here's another one, same class of ship. I think is the... Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this. I know this is the actual class name since this was this first ship. It should be the first ship. There's another ship above it. I would assume that's the same class. I don't know Roma and Littoria. Or was it the Littoria class or was it the... I don't know. You guys got the point. Here's another picture of the tier pits. The Gneisenau. This one is with the 3 guns per turret, even though the bow has a beautiful picture. Look at that. Let me see if I can get the lamp. Better lighting. That's a very beautiful picture of the Gneisenau. King George V, the first in her class, the most modern British battleship during the war, until the Vanguard was set out to seas to fight the adversaries. West Virginia. This is, although the Arizona is the most famous of the ships that I know from Pearl Harbor, I have a love for the West Virginia because this was, to my opinion, probably as iconic as the Arizona. And part of that reason, if you don't recognize this ship, this was the ship that the United States used for their propaganda because they show a photograph of the Arizona being blown up. And hold up. While I'm going through the deck of cards, I think I have a picture of it. So, this is my book, The Rise and Fall of the Imperial Japan. My father bought this book a long time ago. This book is actually older than me. And being in elementary school, I actually read this book, which is, definitely not the book that you should be reading because there are some serious pictures for a child like me, but what can I do? When you're a child, you're always curious. And I'm gonna find. Okay, here we go. We got Pearl Harbor. Here we go, right here. So this is the famous picture of Pearl Harbor that they use for the propagandas. And right there, you can see, I don't think you guys can recognize that because, read that because of the small font and my camera is not the greatest. We got a limited budget here, but this is the USS West Virginia in this picture. And it says that, yeah, it was hammered by the Japanese bombers. And you can see the two towers, these two, I don't know what you call those. I don't want to say, is it a conning tower? I don't think it's a conning tower. That shouldn't be the conning tower. They're just towers. And you can see it on here. Just, if I can find another deck of cards that has a great field of view of it. But this one is colorized, which is cool. Alright. Let's move on. Nelson, yes. This one will cost you 350,000 free XP to unlock on World of Warships. The Iowa. And this one seems to be... Okay, so this is the first version of the Iowa. So this is taken in 1942, and you can tell by that because if you look on the bow, one thing about the Iowa that I recognize and I love and I kind of wish they had on the Montana is that the bow, there should be some sort of armor that kind of like covers the bow, and you might recognize what I'm trying to say, but they would put anti-air Oerlikon guns on the top there. So it looks like they haven't modified it because the Iowa was just not modernized to realize how important anti-air is. But it is 1942, so is there an exact month? No. And they even tell you the tonnage, the top speed, and the number of guns and the size of the guns. So 9 16-inch guns. Sorry for those people out there who are metric, which is 406 millimeters. Here's a picture of another King George V class battleship. I don't know how to pronounce the name properly. I'm going to guess Anson. Here's the famous picture of BB-63, Missouri, 1944. She is bombarding, most likely, I would guess, maybe Iwo Jima. I don't know how to pronounce the ship name, but here's another Royal Navy ship. Might make a great premium. Let's adjust that light here. Oh yes, the HMS Hood. How many out there are Hood lovers? So 1918, right near the end of World War I, if not the end of World War I. Probably the strongest ship at that point of time. It was a very heavy ship. Here's another picture of the Hood. Beautiful. With the King George on top. Here, oh look at that. See, I haven't noticed yet, but they censor the swastika, but they don't censor the Rising Sun. And they still use the Rising Sun in the Japanese Navy to this day, but a lot of Southeast Asian countries hold very different feelings about the sun, especially China, if you ask the Chinese, or Korean. Royal Navy, Resolution, Japanese Fuso and Kirishima, Queen Elizabeth, and Vanguard, the largest battleship ever been built by European power. Heavier than the Bismarck, but I will still side with the Bismarck team if you ask me. But I'm sure there's some people out there who are big fans of the Vanguard. Malaya, I don't know what class of ship this is. Royal Sovereign and Valiant. The Revenge class battleship, I recognize that. Here's another picture of the Anson, the King George V class. So look at that. The Revenge has bigger guns, 8 15-inch guns, or 381 millimeters. 21 knots versus 28 knots. Here's a beautiful picture of the Missouri before they put the American flag on top of the first turret. Was it the first turret or second turret? You get the point. Actually, let me see something. Okay, so you guys can't see that, but For historical significance, they are using the 50-star American flag. The Americans don't have 50 states by that point of time. It's actually 48 states. And when the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, which is Hawaii, Hawaii was just a territory. It was not even a state. Here's the Admiral Grab's Bay, the one I was talking about earlier about how they put the bird and the swastika. I want to guess it's a vulture. Here's the USS Missouri, BB-62. So it looks like I'm refreshing my memory on what number these are designated as. Duke of York, Iowa. Here's a Italian ship. I don't know how to pronounce it. Angela Doria. That sounds more Spanish than Italian to me. Here's another Spanish ship. I'm sure someone out there can pronounce it. Rodney. Resolution. And the Rodney camouflage, you can recognize it. I think that was that's on the Nelson right now in World of Warships, but I don't think that's the actual historical camo on the Nelson. They decided to take it from the Rodney, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong. I mean, if they were going to do that, they might as well just give us the Rodney instead of the Nelson. Here's Resolution. Here is a battleship convoy, and it says that Revenge is on the right side. HMS Revenge, 1915. So this is a combination. Well, that's funny because it says World War II battleships, and yet you got 1915, a convoy ship. Ah, yes. Now we got to the French. So the French biggest battleship, or the largest class of battleship at the time for them, was the Richelieu. It's not the heaviest. That one goes to the Jean Bart, because the Jean Bart was actually continuing her service after World War II, and she was heavily modified to be heavier than the Richelieu. New York, same class as, well, it's the New York class, and the Texas is part of the New York class. Here's a picture of another Admiral Grass Bay class. I think is it the Admiral Grass Bay class, or was it? No, it's not the Admiral Grass Bay. I don't recall, but it's the same class of ship, sister ship to the Admiral Grass Bay. Here's the Scharnhorst, the Scharnhorst class, and look at that. It's 1936, and this was before they put the Atlantic bow on the Scharnhorst. So she has a straight bow that you can find on the Admiral Hipper. Here is the French battleship here. We got a World War I dreadnought, the Kobe. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I know how to pronounce the second one. Is in English is Dunkirk, and in French is Dunkerque. Here is a 1942 colorized picture of a full broadside of the USS Iowa firing just absolutely destruction. I would guess this is probably part of the early parts of the war, probably the Guadalcanal campaign. Or my dates are off. I know Guadalcanal was in the early parts of the war, but yeah, very cool. HMS Warspite with a, I don't know what breed of dog is that. Maybe an English bulldog. That's funny. They show the dog and they show the tonnage of the Warspite, but you know, they know we were talking about the Warspite, but it kind of relates to that. Hey, this dog weighs 35,710 tons and goes at 23.5 knots. Here's a beautiful picture of Maryland. So I think this is a, I don't know what class the ship in the Maryland is. Is it a Colorado class or not? Here we go. Here's some extra information. I'll read it for you guys. By signing the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922, Britain, USA, Japan, France, and Italy agreed to limit the displacement, main armament, and total tonnage of their battleships. Although only Britain and US complied scrupulously, I think scrupulously, don't use that word that often in my language. No new battleships were to be laid down until 1937. So this is the London and Washington Treaty. Let's see what else. According to existing UK battleships were modified, Britain was exempt from the treaty to build Nelson and Rodney. So these were the strongest battleship before the Bismarck, before the Yamato. These were seriously strong battleships. One of the big sevens. In order to replace obsolete and damaged battleships. So a lot of the Royal Navy battleships are just modified of old dreadnoughts from World War One and interwar period design. So yes, Nelson and Rodney are the only battleships that were equipped with 16-inch guns. From what I heard, those guns were, yes, they're 16-inch, but they also had problems with the shell. Let's see. So they got 5 King George V class battleships. I'm just going to speed through here. So it talks about the hood being detonated by the Bismarck, of course, the Battle of the Denmark Strait. So a battleship emphasized armor, gunpowder, and speed. And speed was something that was missing from the U.S. Navy until they introduced the North Carolina class battleship. Whereas the Japanese, they kind of balance it out fairly well. British, their first fast battleship, I would guess, would be the King George V. If you exclude the battle cruisers, of course. Here is, they use the word, okay, so now I remember, it's the Deutschland class battleship, the Deutschland class heavy cruiser. So the Admiral Grasp Bay and the other ships that I've recently listed, I forgot already, but those were described as pocket battleships. It's just a name for the British to describe those ships because those ships, even though they're heavy cruisers, they have big guns. Same guns that you find on the Scharnhorst class battleships. So then they got the Versailles Treaty, which restricted the Germans. This was later reversed when Hitler signed the, I think it was it the Munich Agreement, and basically they did whatever they want after Hitler was crowned as the Führer, or not described, his status as a Führer. Basically, he's the head of Nazi Germany at the time, the Third Reich, head of the Third Reich. So yeah, they started their rebuilding of the Kriegsmarine, ready for war, right? So they got the Bismarck, the Tirpitz, Royal Air Force, bombed the Tirpitz, the Littorio, and a lot of Italian names that I can't pronounce. I'm sorry. French battleships, Hood, Valiant, Japanese attack in Pearl Harbor. Let's see, they sunk 4 ships. Only 2 North Carolina class ships were modern. Yes, I know that. Well, I think they kind of forgot about the South Dakota class here. And then Japan with their sneaky ways of building the Yamato class battleship and try to get around the treaty to get ready for a potential war, which turned out to be the war that we know as World War II. So traditionally, U.S. battleships were slow and powerful. Yet no U.S. battleships were lost to naval gunfire. And I think that's pretty much it. Here's your deck of cards. Beautiful. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time on my channel.